Hello and welcome, everybody, to another episode of Coaching from the Heart. I am your host, Tyler Thurman, and joining me, as always, my co host, good friend, coaching colleague, and just a wonderful human being, Harold Feddersen.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, Harold, thanks for being with me again today on this lovely Thursday, as we do most Thursdays. So, our topic for today is forgiveness and the holidays. And before we jump into that in any great detail, I just want to give people a way to find both of us. So, Harold and I are both transformative coaches, teachers, spiritual teachers, and coaches, and we work with people um, in the type of fashion and content that we'll be discussing in our show today and in every show that we do. We take people on a journey of self-discovery, essentially. And so if you're interested in working with either one of us in a deeper capacity, you can find me at www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com, and it's kind of my online playground. You can find free articles and videos and all sorts of fun stuff there. And Harold, where can everyone find you?
They can find me on WordPress. My blog is hearttohand.wordpress.com. And I can also be found on Facebook, The Awakening Heart.
Fantastic. So I thought we would switch up the format a little bit today. So usually I am the one setting the table for the topic, but I'm going to let you go ahead and dive us into the topic of forgiveness, and we'll kind of touch on the holiday aspect of it as we go. But why don't you take us away?
Okay. So a little bit of background, I guess. In November, I went to see my favorite poet, David White. He was in Vancouver doing a workshop. And this workshop it's a one-day event. I've been to it twice. He's had them three times, and this one was called "Seven Elements: the Foundations of a Courageous Life." And he's an amazing poet. He's an amazing philosopher, just all around very courageous guy. And near the end of the workshop, he read an excerpt from his book, Consolations, the solace, nourishment, um, and underlying meaning of everyday words. And the line that I wrote down in my little journal was um, forgiveness never arises from the part of us that was wounded. And I like that so much because for me, it just that feels so true.
Hmm.
You know, the forgiveness doesn't arise from the part of us that was wounded. You know, and I wrote a little blog post about this. And I wrote, forgiveness arises from a greater part of us, you know, the part that is safe from the wounding, the part of us which holds the wounded within us in a way that allows the healing to occur. And, you know, it kind of speaks to the true nature of how this goes, I think, for us, or this is my experience anyway,
Sure.
where we are seemingly wounded by someone's actions or words, or our own actions or words. Um, and then there's the need for the forgiveness to enter. And the
Hmm.
forgiveness cannot enter from that which was wounded, because that which was wounded is temporary or temporal.
Right.
Um, and forgiveness, which is an act of love, comes from the greatest aspect of what we are.
Hmm.
Um, so I think, you know, I've been thinking a little bit about forgiveness over the last few days, and boy, there's so many angles and directions and little you know, directions we could take with this. Um, but I have a feeling this is probably a common. There's enough common ground between you and I and how we experience and
Hmm.
talk with people about forgiveness that
Yeah.
yeah. So how
Yeah.
does that any of that resonate for you?
That lands for me. Beautiful landing there. What really stood out to me, well, a lot of that stood out to me, actually. There's some beautiful words by both you and David White. And the one of the things that really stood out to me was the seeming wound, or this, there's a, there's a part of us that thinks it's been wounded, or it has, but we haven't, kind of a thing. So I really just loved how you put that. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but I really liked everything you said, and I just wanted to kind of set the table with um, how. So that's a little bit about the beauty of forgiveness, right? Um, but it's also it's a struggle for most people, and I think it goes similarly for most people as well in the world at large, right? We all kind of do forgiveness in the way that we've been taught, right? In the way that the world teaches us is appropriate. And you kind of laid it out there, but I want to just put it out in my own words that it, here's how it goes. We're interacting with other people all the time, right? And sometimes somebody will do something that seems to hurt me, right? You said that beautifully. That seems to wound some part of me, right? Um, and then I get to be the victim, and I get to say, you are guilty. You're guilty of um, whatever action it was. But not only are you guilty of the action, you're guilty of the wounding of me, right? And we're not talking literally, physically, right? Because this is a bit of a different conversation, although it can pertain to physical stuff. Um, so I get to be hurt, and then I get to hold on to the hurt as a essentially as a weapon, right? As a form of attack, as a form of um, getting back at you, essentially, for what you've done to me. Right? You have actually hurt me, and you're guilty of that. You have essentially sinned, quote unquote. And sin, in a very definition, is requiring. It demands punishment, right? So I'm going to punish you uh, in the best way I know how, which is the way most of us do it, which is I'm going to hold grievances against you. I'm going to be resentful towards you until I deem you worthy of forgiveness. Right? You've paid your penance, you've served your time. Now it's time for me to let it go. Right? Um, and then I do that as best I can, which is usually more of a dimming over time, right? Gets a little less salty over time, but oftentimes we never really ever let stuff go completely. We never we never forget. That's one of the sayings with forgiveness, right? Forgive but never forget. Well, that's not true forgiveness. that's that's partial forgiveness at best. So that I just wanted to lay it out as that's how we usually do it. Um, is that kind of your experience of either when you're working with somebody, Harold, or maybe yourself in the past before you learned any of all this good stuff?
Myself in the present, you mean? Because it's a constant thing, I think
Yeah.
there are a couple things. One is that I like to think that I'm present enough most of the time that I can catch the wounding when it's going on, and when you do, it's like, oh, that stings, those words or whatever, those actions, whatever, you're like, oh, that stings. And then, just being able to recognize the sting of it or the wound of it at the time shows that you're actually not in the association with that which is being wounded, right? Because that's where all the trouble really comes in, is the more we associate with that aspect of us that is wounded,
Yeah.
the more we actually will be wounded and victimized and so forth and so on. But we can actually be in that place, the place that holds the wound, the greater place that that allows the healing to occur of um, that wound. So so it's even, it's in my present, to be honest, Tyler. Somebody will say something and I'll just be like, oh, that's sharp. um and a bunch of time ago, however long ago, it would have been like, "Ah," and I want to come back or try to defend it, or I would have held a grudge against that person or something, right? And now it's just a practice, like, oh wow, that stings. And then you just step, into a bigger space, take a
Hmm.
breathe into a bigger sense of what you are, and then all of a sudden it's all just kind of contained, in front of you. It's like a bubble. um
Right.
so I think that's part of it. And I think you said something else that caught my thing. What was it? The thing where somebody will do or say something to us, which is the initial thing, but then we will also hold them for wounding us.
Right.
And I think that's a big area that could be just opened right up. Because you could say to me whatever hurtful thing you could
You
come up with.
bastard.
You would probably have to search it on the internet to find something because it's not in you. But if you found something, that's this. What did you call it? Emotional stabbing,
Yeah,
I
laced with
think. Yeah,
poison.
yeah. At least in the poison. Um, so that would be the knife, right? Uh, and I can either allow that cut or not, is one step of it. And then there's another step also where I actually give you all the power in saying you have wounded me. Because that's a
Mm,
really thick victimy, sticky victimy kind of way to be, right? Like, that person did this to me.
yeah.
And it may be true in the sense that that person physically did something to you.
They did the action, they said the thing.
They
Yeah.
did, yeah, they did the actual said thing. That's a nice way to put it. Um, but there's that area within us that sticks to that, you wounded me. That's the part that we really need to enter into, um,
Yeah.
because that's the part where we are powerless. The other person has all the power. We are just a victim.
Or at least we've given that power away, right?
Yeah, because there's no actual thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we do it, and we do it all the time.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because to me that gets right to the heart of the conversation about actually wanting to forgive, right? Because
Hmm.
we've talked about this in past shows, right? Probably many times. But there's an aspect of our ego that it just craves victimhood, right? And another way of being saying another way of saying being a victim is innocence, right? I'm innocent. They are guilty, right? They're the guilty part. They did this to me, right? I may be miserable. I may be hurting, but I'm right and they're wrong. Or I'm miserable. I'm hurting, and I didn't have anything to do with it. They did it. They exerted it on me. And so the part of us that loves that is the part of us we're up against when it comes to forgiveness. So we have to first acknowledge part of us doesn't want to forgive, doesn't want anything to do with forgiveness, because then we have to give up essentially that righteous indignation.
With our dessert fork.
Seems to be the thread that flows
Yeah,
between all the shows, right?
that's
That 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 and maybe love.
the common comedy skit right there.
So yeah, there's that thing that we have to give up, which really is nothing, right? I mean, what we're essentially giving up is our misery and our hurt and our. It's not to say you're never going to get hurt again, or feel hurt, but um, but but we do have to give up being the innocent victim, um, because true forgiveness, in my estimation and my experience, is to do with a a, a growing relationship with the truth of who we are. Is some of the language I tend to use. You said something beautiful about that in the beginning. I don't know if that was David White's words, but the part of ourself that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was mine. Forgiveness rises from the greater part of us, the part safe from the wounding, the
mm,
part of us which holds the wounded within us in a way that allows the healing to occur.
So yeah, so that's it. That's it. So it's the part of us that is our true self, for lack of a better way of talking about it, right? It's not the false self, in other words, which is our personality, our psychology, a lot of that crap that we pick up along the way as we travel through life. Um, there's a there's kind of a foundational self, if you will, a part of us that is just, it's not going anywhere. It's not changing. Sometimes I call it an extension of the mind of God. I could call it spirit, love, higher self, mind with a capital M. Um, it, but it's so it's not forgiveness in the typical way that we've learned it, which is you have wronged me, you have perpetrated me in some way, you have done me harm. Now, obviously, we can physically do harm to other bodies, other people's bodies, right? I'm not talking about that. So we have to look at true forgiveness. We have to question the very foundation of the forgiveness we've been taught, which is my true self can be assaulted or assailed in any way, shape, or form. Right? Some people even talk like that, like, "Oh, you hurt me down to my very soul." Right? So Harold's smiling.
Yeah, it's just a good one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm sure you've heard people say that. I hear people say that all the time. That kind of thing. It's it's what I like to call a case of mistaken identity, right? Because you actually talked a bit about our identification with the hurt,
Hmm.
with with the wound. It's not the wounding that's the problem. Not that there's really a problem in the first place, but it presents as a problem for a lot of people. Um, it's we think it happened to us. Now again, the person may have said the thing or said the words or did the thing, right? But it's the wounding that we say, not only did they do the thing and say the words, but those actions and words did something to me. They fundamentally altered the very fabric of who I am in an unchangeable, unforgivable fashion, right? They have sinned against me, and now they're deserving of my punishment, or just punishment in general, right? Most of us hope that we get to be the ones to dish out the punishment. Um, but we have to question that. We have to question the very presupposition that the truth of who I am, actions and words can get to that somehow. Sure, our bodies can be hurt, injured, wounded. Not arguing that. Our psychology, our personality can certainly be wounded, right? And hurt and maybe even damaged, right? That's who we think we are, though. That's who we believe ourselves to be. But most people who've done even taken a cursory glance within their own minds have seen something deeper that exists within all of us, something more fundamental, more bedrock, more um, unassailable, for lack of a better term. and, do you have some words about that, Harold?
No, it's terrible. Whenever you say unassailable, I just think of a boat with no sail. Yes. I try not to vision that.
And me puking over the side because I get
Yeah.
sick. No. But I'm forgiving the sails and the boats and the captain.
One of the things that we have to face when we're in the conversation of forgiveness is like you said, there's the wounding, and then there is the uh, reprimand, which is a conversation within the same conversation. So if you wound me and I'm going to punish you, I'm still in the same conversation that we were
Mm,
in when you were wounding me. It's the same, or to put it in another way, it's the same level of mind.
right.
Um, right.
So we're
Um,
waging a war of sorts.
yeah. Like you poke me and then I'll poke you and then you'll punch me, I'll punch you. And it's always the same kind of level.
Right. Right.
So, so we have to be willing to have a new kind of conversation. We have to be
Yeah.
willing to enter into a larger space. And part of what we run into with that is the willingness or unwillingness to do that. Um,
Mm,
because that we all have various depths of victimhood that we live from, and being wounded and feeling like we get to be the wounded one is a
mm,
warm and fuzzy victim coat. It's like a giant fluffy house coat that we get to
yeah.
wear. And it serves a deep value for us from the sense that we want to be a victim. Because
Yeah.
that part of ourself that was wounded also wants to be a victim. It wants to keep that alive. So one of the things that is usually useful is to really allow yourself to sink into what is the value
Mm,
of holding that on yourself or against the other person.
right.
And then bringing that forward, through our words or through writing, um, either with, like someone with like the likes of us, or someone who's willing to just listen,
Yeah.
to get that out. Because when it's just in your head, it's really easy to justify and to sort of circulate yourself around and around. So getting it out in some way, either writing or talking,
Right.
so that you can see it a little bit clearer. Um,
See it for what it really is maybe a way that I would
yeah.
put it. Because it's tricky when it's in there, right? It's like you said, it's circular in nature. Um, it's not something that when brought to the light looks as pretty. Right? It doesn't look as warm and inviting
Mm,
as that coat that you were talking about. It looks less appealing. That's why we bring it out, in my experience.
hmm
One of the reasons. Yeah, go ahead.
Because it really is. It's a place of powerlessness, right? That's the whole thing about being a victim is you have no power. You're just the victim of it all.
Yeah.
And as as beings in the world, we are we are the infinite. We are the all that there is. We are the most powerful thing that there is. I don't mean us as humans. I mean us as expressions of
The
uh,
divine.
the divine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so when we coddle to our victim self, we're actually dismissing a much greater power that we
Mm,
are.
sure.
It's like playing. It's like I don't know. It's playing small. It's playing
Yeah.
tiny. It's being tiny when you're start trying to be a speck of sand when you're the whole beach.
A drop of water in the ocean.
A drop of water in the ocean. Yes. I'm catching some William Blake is coming into my mind right now.
Just run with it, Harold. Just run with it.
Yeah. Um, so that in conversations, that's one of the things that shows up is, like, what is it? What's in it for you? What are you really getting out of this, hanging on to this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you really, not in a, oh, well, no, what are you really getting from this? Because,
Riches.
right? Little chocolate righteous indignation.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to
Um,
joke with you on such a serious
because
topic.
we as humans this is big, we only do what is valuable for
Mm,
us. So if being a victim is valuable for us, then that's the place that's the door we need to enter. That's this conversation we need to be in,
right.
because
Yeah.
that's where it's at. And
And
people,
oftentimes it's hidden, right? It's the
absolutely, yeah, it's almost always hidden.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
People
value.
they don't look in that
Well,
way.
there's this it's an because it's an unconscious value driving us. So it's not. It could sound like, oh, I value this, therefore I do this. It's not. It's usually not that surface level. So
It's almost never that.
I just wanted to put that
Almost
in.
never, eh? Almost never.
Right.
And that's actually one of my favorite conversations to get into with people, is the value conversation.
Mm,
I remember talking with a client recently about values, and um, it was like, so what are some things that you value? It's like, oh, or just what do you like? Oh, I really like it when my desk is clean. I'm like, oh, okay, great. What do you like about that? Well, everything's got its place and looks good. And it's like, oh, what do you like about that? And it took about 3 layers, maybe 4, but eventually we got to the ultimate value for her of the clean desk is a deep sense of freedom.
mm,
Like when everything is just in its spot, there's all this freedom and space that opens up for her.
Right.
And with freedom, often for her comes peace. Uh, so, on the surface, like you were just saying, on the surface, it's this, it's about the desk, but it's not
Right.
about the desk. It's never about the desk. Um, so that's part of it, entering into a spot where you do not want, well, some part of you wants to forgive. Uh,
Some
some
part
part
of
of you
you
wants,
already has.
some part of you, yeah, some part of
We'll
you has
get into
already
that.
started that conversation. Yeah. To dig into that, to know that the reason why you're hanging on is because you find it valuable, is
Right.
sometimes valuable in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes back to that. You brought up willingness. We've talked about willingness.
Yeah,
I
such a
think,
good word.
yeah, I think a fair amount, even on the show, but certainly a lot uh, between you and I. And it's, it is, it, it does seem, that seems to be part of the equation. Um, and you nailed it on the head. Our willingness to forgive or not to forgive, it could be our willingness to hold on to the resentment, to the pain. Uh, it's it's kind of the key to the whole thing. But at the heart of our willingness, well, because you could ask, well, how do I get willing, right? You look at it, just like you were saying, Harold. You look at it, and not only do you identify the value, but look at what it's cost you. Look at, or more accurately, look at what it's costing you. Present tense. It's continuing to cost you. Because as we bring that value out to the light, we say, oh, you know, they deserve for me to be resentful towards them. All this,
Hmm.
all this stuff. Well, what we eventually come to, every single forgiveness conversation I've ever had, including with myself, is it's costing me my own peace of mind and just love in my heart,
Hmm.
right? I'm holding on to hate. I'm holding on to those grievances, those resentments. And I don't know much about the initial hurt. I think we kind of have to dish that out to ourselves as well. But I know for sure we have to provide the ongoing hurt for ourselves. And it's not a conscious thing, right? It's by holding on to it, we recreate it again and again and again and again. And it sucks. That's a technical psychological term, right?
Jungian, I believe.
Yep, yep. It may be Freudian roots. I'm not sure, but um, yeah. Go ahead.
The other thing that goes with that is, when because that original wounding, let's say, it was a single event.
Right.
Um, it was at some point in the past, which absolutely does not exist anymore. You actually do, you said it nicely. So you have to recreate the wound in order for it to exist in the present.
Mm,
You have to recreate it because it's gone. It's 10 years ago, it was 5 years ago, it was 20 years ago, it was 50 years, whatever it was. It was some point in the past. You bring it alive now, and it's costing you the presence of your being, and it's costing you your true connection to the world, and it's
mm,
costing you um, being in contact with love, as you said, and it's costing the world or that person love as well, because
yeah.
you're no longer willing to be love in the space of your relationship,
Right.
whether or not you're actually physically together or not.
Sure.
Because a lot of this, is if we get into the deeper stuff, it's often with our siblings or our parents or grandparents. and it's
which is
often from a long time ago, which
yeah,
segue. Um,
holidays.
um, and I think ultimately, this reminds me of David White again. I'm going to read a little bit something for you. I can't let it go. So
Fantastic.
this is, I don't know if I'm breaking some sort of rules, but this is from his book Constellations. And he says, forgiveness is a heartache and difficult to achieve because strangely, it not only refuses to eliminate the original wound, but actually draws us closer to its source. To approach forgiveness is to close in on the nature of the hurt itself, the only remedy being, as we approach its raw center, to reimagine our relation to it.
Hmm.
And I think that speaks beautifully to what we're talking about, which is there was the the original wounding, and then there was our initial reaction to it. And if we want to bring forgiveness, we need to create a new relationship with the wound
Right.
so as to release ourselves from the shackles that we've created.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. And I think we can go even deeper, I think, in the sense that understanding that original wound for what it really was um, can allow us to let go of it now. Um, and and what it was, as much as nobody's going to want to hear this, but it was a choice, not on any kind of conscious level. We chose on some level, on the level of the ego mind that loves hurt and it loves to be the victim. We chose to be hurt. Not we didn't choose the actions the person did or the words the person said. Didn't, as far as I know, right? Maybe on like the biggest metaphysical level. But as far as I know, we didn't do that. But our experience of that person taking those actions, saying those words, is created within our own mind. Right? That's not to say it doesn't still hurt like hell sometimes. And that's not to say it doesn't feel incredibly real like that, um, for lack of a better way of talking about it, like that emotional knife stabbing, right? It's actually a beautiful analogy in the sense that there's no knife, right? There's no actual emotional, you can't actually stab somebody. You can say, here's the thing, I could say something that I intend to be extremely hurtful, right? I could do that. I generally don't as much as I can avoid it. Um, but on your end, there's a choice to be made, right? And it doesn't present itself as a choice typically, but as our understanding deepens, it can from time to time. And that's, you know, how is this going to land for me? What is this going to mean to me? And that's usually simply a function of my own relationship with my soul, with my spirit, right? That's not to say you're like you suck at life if you feel hurt by what other people say and do. Not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's an opportunity to have a different experience of the same kind of thing that happens over and over and over in our lives, right? People do things that aren't okay with us, and then we feel hurt. We feel betrayed. We feel wounded. Um, and there's an opportunity to have a different experience. um, this brings to mind a story I heard. Uh, it's not a story like it real events, but a metaphor essentially for just the capacity of us human beings to see things in a new light, right? And it's particularly relevant to forgiveness. Um, so, and bear with me, I haven't told this for a while, so it might be a couple of hiccups, but um, so imagine you are laying by the side of a pool. You're on a tropical vacation, or somewhere wherever your heart's desire. You want to go. You want to relax and enjoy yourself. Um, so just imagine yourself there, and you're laying in this just the most comfortable pool chair you've ever been in, and you reach into your bag, you grab a book that you've been dying to read for the last 2 months, and you've been too busy at work to get into it. And you crack it open, and it's everything you thought it was going to be, right? It's amazing. Favorite author, great story. And all of a sudden, as you're laying there, enjoying your book, relaxed, you feel some water splashing on your feet. And you're like, oh, there's kids, playing in the pool. You don't really acknowledge them. You say, they're just having fun, right? I'm on vacation. It's all good. And then all of a sudden, the splashing gets a little bit more, and you're like, yeah, I'm still really enjoying my book, but uh, you know, there's sure a lot of splashing. I wonder if I should ask him to stop. You're like, no, 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 I'm on vacation. I'm just gonna ignore him. And then the splashing gets cranked up to the max, right? Finally, your book gets wet, you get soaked, and you've had it. Right? You're like, I can't believe they did this to me. I'm on vacation. I just want some peace and quiet. And you finally say, okay, I'm going to tell this kid off. And put your book down, stand up, and to your shock, you see the child is drowning. And it changes things like that, right? Now, I don't know exactly what your new response is going to be, but it's not going to be annoyance, right? You're probably, who knows what you're going to do, but likely you're going to be spurred into some kind of action to help this person, right? Because that's kind of where most people go. Uh, but it changed, our resentment, our annoyance, our frustration. It can change in an instant the second you see the truth of what's going on. Now that's kind of a superficial example of truth, right? The truth that this person is drowning instead of trying to piss me off. um, but in the context of forgiveness, you can see the truth that nobody from a place of love tries to hurt anybody else. So that person, whatever they did, whatever they said, they're almost certainly hurting themselves, one. And two, best thing I can do for myself and them is love them. Now, I don't know what that will look like action wise. That could take any number of forms. But if you know those things, forgiveness is going to be a heck of a lot easier. Now, it's not, there's still a learning curve, right? And it can be steep sometimes because people can do some pretty awful things in the midst of their own pain. But there's a capacity that we all have, you, Harold, me, everybody out there, to see things for what they really are, which is they're hurting. Love is the only appropriate response. And if I have some resentments, I want to be angry at you. That's okay. But no, it's sure it may act as an attack on them, but it's truly just an attack on yourself. And so we talked about willingness. When you can see some of those things, some of those deeper truths, you're going to have a lot more willingness to let things go and just be at peace, regardless of what has been done to you. What do you think, Harold? Sorry, I'm stepping off of soapbox, stepping down from pulpit.
That was good. That was a good story. It almost leads me, well, it could lead us into an entire conversation on context,
Sure, sure,
which
sure.
is maybe that'll be another show because
Another day, perhaps.
that's a whole thing. But yeah, story is such a neat way to offer us a way to quickly see things, parables and such.
Yeah, and I want to be. I also want to just clarify that that's not to say the other person isn't gonna have some malcontent, malintent in mind, right? It could be a kid trying to piss you off in the pool, right? It's that's you know that's why I said that the truth part of it is a little superficial.
Hmm. Yeah, because that's
Of
not really the point of it.
no, it's not. I'm pointing towards a capacity that we have to see a deeper truth in any moment.
It's like one of those things it's such a basic thing is, we're not responsible for other people's, what other people are bringing. We're
Mm,
only responsible for what we're doing with it and
yeah,
where we are responding from within ourselves.
yeah, absolutely. And one as one of my uh, mentors used to say, Sydney Banks. He's since passed, but he used to say, "Life's a contact sport." Right? It's you're not gonna avoid the blows. Like you're gonna get hit sometime, physically, emotionally, psychologically. It's what we do with it, and it's not that there's some technique, judo technique where I say "whapa" and I, dodged it and turned it around on itself and spun it back at you. It's how we respond fundamentally comes from our deeper understanding of who we are. It flows from that. So there's no technique involved in this. It's just a willingness to look, and what you see is going to make all the difference in the world. But you have to look. You have to be willing to look and then look. and then everything flows from there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's why I like I like to frame it in that way. How whatever they're bringing, because we often say, how are you going to react or how are you going to respond? But I don't even like that because
Yeah,
responding already, we are inside of the same conversation. It's the same
yeah,
thing.
because we're responding to that thing that has been done to us.
Exactly. And so that's why I like to phrase it as, who do you want to be? Where do you want to come from within yourself?
Mm,
Because then the conversation is much bigger. It's already there are options.
sure.
How do you want to respond? It's such a limited. We're already in a limited conversation. We're actually in the same conversation, just the reverse side of it. But
Yeah.
where within yourself do you want to come from? Because you don't even have to. That's the other thing, is it? Because we often think we have to. You may be called to respond, or you may just be called
Right.
to be silent.
Yeah, the form doesn't matter, right?
Hmm.
It's either coming from love or it's coming from resentment and fear and frustration. And but I love that simplicity that you put to it. And in fact, I would take it one step further and I would just ask the question, who am I? Am I this weak, miserable victim of a personality that gets hurt by everything everybody says to me about me, even what people think about me? Or am I more than that? Is there more to me than that? I guarantee you there is, even if you're not aware of it. But but yet you know, we have to start. I love what you put. We have to start with a bigger conversation, uh, a higher altitude view,
Hmm.
if you will.
Especially as we enter the holidays,
Yeah.
one of the fascinating things about holidays for most people is the resurrection of familial patterns of behavior.
Mm,
And you get into that. They did this, I react in this way. They did this, I respond in this way.
right.
So that question, who, where do where from within myself do I want to come in this? It creates the possibility for something completely new, some
Mm,
completely new way of being with your family or whatever your holiday makeup looks like.
yeah. Yeah. And I just want to tell people, be gentle with yourselves as you explore this. Right? Like I said, there's a learning curve. You know, you're, if you've not really been that familiar with the kind of forgiveness that we're talking about, don't expect to be able to forgive somebody as they're nailing your hands to a cross, right? On the first day. That's day two of forgiveness lessons. Now that's an advanced course, right? But we all have that capacity within us to say, they know not what they do. In fact, they don't do anything. To me, there's a quote from A Course in Miracles, which could very easily be retitled A Course in Forgiveness. But all, 1,200, 1,600 some pages. Um, essentially a course in forgiveness, right? There's a line that says, I forgive my brothers and sisters for what they have not done, right? In what that means is they did the thing, they said the words, but nothing meaningful happened because nothing meaningful changed about the truth and the peace and the love of who I am. That can't be taken from us. It can be covered over. It can be obscured by us and our choice for something else. but it's always there waiting for us to turn back towards it and embrace it.
I'm
Harold?
thinking, I'm thinking of some just you know practical advice. I just had a picture, Ann Maybell walking in the front door, bags of Christmas presents, and she says, first thing she says, not even hello, it's like, oh my God, what have you done with your hair? You know, and it's like that's that moment, right? When you
Yeah,
just close your eyes, take a breath, and enter into the largest space that you can.
yeah,
you know,
and let me put it in context for folks, just as a way of thinking about it, right? Because we've all had people say that kind of thing to us or people we love, uh, probably during the holidays, right? Um, and it's it's literally laughable to think that comments, actions of other people, especially like that, right? But literally anything has the power to take the peace and the love of God from us. Um, it's our birthright. It's our um, it's our divine right. Uh, the only choice we have is, do I want to create the illusion of them taking this from me, taking my peace of mind from me, taking this innate love and well-being from me, or do I not want to do that? It's not in when you see it like that, and it's possible to see it like that. It's not a hard choice to make, right? The peace and the love of the universe, uh, misery, resentment, upset, frustration, stress. The choice is yours. Now, it's not always, it's at first it's not going to seem quite that simple, and that's okay. But know that it is actually like that on some level, and you'll get there. But be gentle with yourselves as you explore it, because it's actually there is a more practical, not more practical, but maybe more grounded statement that can't remember where I first heard it, but may have been Wayne Dyer actually back when I listened to a lot of Hay House Radio. But somebody said, uh, "Why would you ever get upset at somebody for doing what you know they're going to do? That's insane. You know that's what they do, right? Why is upset the way to be?" And sure, there's contexts where we don't know what they're going to do, but when it comes to family and the holidays, like you said, Harold, falling into those roles, those familiar behavioral patterns, we know what they're going to do. We know what they're going to say. My mother-in-law's gonna insult me in some way, or my crazy grandma that's uh, been into the eggnog too much.
and
She's gonna insult what I'm wearing, or something like that, right?
Aunt Mabel's gonna find the driest piece of food at the table and comment on it.
Yeah. So we in that sense, we know what those people are gonna do. We know what they're gonna say. Generally speaking, why is upset the way to be about that? Just love them for who they are, or for who they think they are as well, and you'll be fine. Harold, any parting shots as we kind of wrap up the show here?
I knew you were gonna say that. That always makes me laugh. Um, just enjoy it, Just
Yeah,
enjoy it.
yeah. Relax into it. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be this serious, heavy thing.
Breathe your way into the space that there is.
Yeah. And if someone's being awful towards you, just know they're hurting more than you. And, you know, love is a great way to approach everything. And so it's simple. Just love them through it, through the holidays and into the new year. So, so thank you for joining us for another episode of Coaching from the Heart. It's been a pleasure as always. And just want to reiterate, if you enjoyed this conversation or any of our past conversations, and you want to reach out to either Harold or myself to work with us in a deeper capacity, you can find me at Coach Tyler Thurman. That's Coach TYLERTHURMAN .blogspot.com. And you can find all my contact information there. And I look forward to hearing from you. And Harold, where can everyone get in touch with you?
You can subscribe to my blog, which is hearttohand.wordpress.com. Or you can like me on Facebook at The Awakening Heart.
Fantastic. And thank you all for those of you who joined us live. And until next week, with all the love in the world, take care.